Hello and welcome to Retail Management, BUS302. Our week 3 topic is retail strategy and the consumer, and this is lecture video number 4. So far this week, we've talked about the consumer buying process. We've looked at the different buying decisions. We've talked about how retailers can segment various markets. We reviewed the retail strategy at the various highest level, just describing what it is. And in this particular video, we'll conclude for the week by talking about this idea of what is a sustainable competitive advantage and how do we build that. So in the retail area, right, we have these retail market segments that we want to target, right? These group of consumers that have similar needs that we know we can meet those needs using various channels and formats, right? We know how to do this. And so our goal then is to build a sustainable competitive advantage, which is how do we meet the needs of those consumers over and over again in a way that's sustainable, right? So we want to do that. So some of the different ways that we can look at this is we can define our retail formats, right? So we have the retail formats on the going vertically, and then the fashion segments are going to be our horizontal. So when we talk about our fashion segments, maybe we have a conservative group, a traditional group, and a fashion forward group. And our retail formats, well, we have our specialty stores, department stores, discount stores, and off price. So we can understand, part of understanding our competitive advantages is saying, okay, how do we match our retail format to the group that we need? So the traditional, that traditional fashion group, right? In the specialty store, that's the Gap. In a department store, that's Kohl's or maybe a Macy's. Discount store, you're talking maybe Walmart, Target, right? Or in the off-price, Target, TJ Maxx, right? So this is one way that we can look at targeting various groups, right? So the retail format matches the group or the market segment. Now, the idea here is to create something that is sustainable, right? Something that is going to help us be more competitive over the long term, right? Those are some of those advantages that we can create are going to be sustainable. The ones that are copied quickly, that's tough because if they can be copied quickly, then they're not sustainable. And so that we're going to be constantly trying to come up with the next thing. So the three key things that you want to do to build something that's sustainable is you want to build your strong relationships with the customers. You want to build strong relationships with your suppliers, and then you want to be as efficient as possible. So these are the three things that you want to do to build a sustainable competitive advantage. So when we start looking at these, some sources of advantage, there's some sources, less sustainable and more sustainable, right? So less sustainable, more locations. Well, more locations, it's not the greatest because they're easy to, your competitors can put more locations in. More sustainable are going to be convenient, that are going to be harder to get to, right? More employees, not necessarily the best. I mean, having good employees, but more employees aren't always the thing. Sustainable is committed, knowledgeable, right? So as we move, right, some sources of advantage to, there's different ways to think about this, less sustainable, more sustainable. And what we've done with these sources of advantage is we've listed them to the chapters that we're going to be talking about them in the book. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about relationships with our customers. Having loyal customers, right? These are customers that are committed to buying merchandise and services from you, right? That is a huge competitive advantage. It's more than simply liking one retailer over another. It's being committed to one retailer over another. And sometimes this happens with brands, but it can happen with retailers as well. So brand image, right? That idea of brand image, having that customer loyalty because it stands for that predictable level of quality. Now, throughout this particular video, I've talked a little bit and mentioned that, my wife has encouraged me to buy a new vehicle. And as I'm going to a dealership and talking with somebody, I was at the Subaru Hyundai dealer, and I was talking with the person at the Subaru side, and I said, I've noticed people who buy Subarus always tend to want to come back and buy a Subaru. He's like, yep, it's pretty much guaranteed. Once you're in a Subaru, you're always in a Subaru. Those people are very loyal to that brand. Same thing with like a Honda, very loyal to that brand. Apple, very loyal to a brand, right? Because there's a certain amount of loyalty, predictable quality, and things like that. It could also be positioning, how a product is positioned in a customer's mind. We talk about positioning, we're talking about how do customers think about a product based on two variables. For example, if we're talking about stores that have limited service or extensive service, and that's that horizontal axis. So on the very left-hand side of the screen, you're seeing limited service retailers versus extensive service retailers on the right-hand side of the screen. And you're thinking about, again, products that are either fashion forward on the vertical axis, something very fashion forward, or very traditional at the very low end of the axis, so at the bottom of the screen, right? So when you start thinking about stores that provide extensive fashion forward things, you're talking about a Neiman Marcus, you're talking about Bloomingdale's or Nordstrom's, high-end products, right? That's the perception, and people might be very loyal to those. Now, if you're thinking, hey, I want fashion forward, but I don't really care about all I don't need people buying me cappuccinos while I shop like they do at Nordstrom's or whatever, you might be more on the TJ Maxx, Marshall side, where you want to be more fashion forward, but you want to be cheaper, not cheaper, less expensive, right? So you're looking at TJ Maxx, Marshall's, Target, somewhere in there. Now, if you're thinking about very more traditional type merchandise, you're looking again, maybe at Talbot's, or right. So you're looking, so you can position and say, okay, where do we fit in the perceptions of consumers, right? Where are we at in their area? And again, once we understand where we're at in the mindset and the perception of a consumer, we're able to take steps to try and change that perception at times, right? So that's that idea of having a loyal customer. You can have unique merchandise using a private label brand or a store brand. Provide great customer service. These are ways to develop customer loyalty, and because that's a great way to develop competitive advantage. Another way that we can do this is using technology, and we'll talk more about this in future lectures, where we would create a customer relationship management program, the CRM model, right? Frequent shopper programs, a loyalty program. We're giving people a certain, rewarding them for purchases, right? So some of those things, this is where, you going in and being hey, do you have a loyalty card? And you punch your card number in, right? Those are things that, again, build relationships with your customers over time, and will, again, develop that sustainable competitive advantage. Or maybe it's just developing a community using digital media, that retail community using some sort of technology. That mobile community would be another way to do that. A second way, not just building good relationships with customers, a second great strategy for a sustainable competitive advantage is having a great relationship with your suppliers. Understanding who your most important vendors are and developing those relationships, not just the vendors, but the suppliers, understanding that and developing some sort of mutually beneficial program to create a competitive advantage. This does take a long time to do because you're building relationships, right? And these relationships don't happen overnight. So you want to develop these different ways to approach things and work with suppliers and vendors to create that. So the last way that you can develop a sustainable competitive advantage is getting more efficient within your internal operations. So having a human resource management, right? Skilled employees, knowledgeable, skilled employees, they're huge. They really are going to be your most important asset, right? So making sure that you take care of those employees. Seeing companies in the last couple of years raise the starting wage of their employees has been huge, because that helps them retain employees. The longer you retain somebody, the less you have to train them, and the more loyal they are, right? So that just helps. Another thing you can do is develop a really, your distribution information system, right? So finding ways to use technology to really tailor your merchandise and tailor your promotions, getting to, understanding who your consumers are and everything else, that is going to help you tremendously, okay? Location. Now, this is probably the most important, it really is the most important factor in deciding if it's a good location, whether or not consumers are going to go there. But it's not something. It's not something that is going to be sustainable, because you might get a competitor that can move in down the street. It might cost them a little bit, right? So, but understanding that you can maybe, like Starbucks, saturate an area where you have a Starbucks on every corner, that would make it harder. So that would be more of a competitive advantage that's not easily duplicated. But location itself is not something that can be sustainable, but it can help you develop a competitive advantage. Your goal, though, is to develop multiple sources, right? So the key is not just to have loyal customers or good vendor relationships or good internal control or good efficiency. What you want to do is have multiple sources, right? So the more things that you can do will help protect your position as a market leader, right? So think about McDonald's. They have good value, efficient service, brand name, convenient, right? Locations. Same thing with IKEA, right? All these things, you want to have multiple things. You can't build it all on one item. You should have multiple sources of a competitive advantage. All of those things would be considered a strength, or it would be evaluated in your strengths and weaknesses. So now, what do we want to do with our strategies? So this is where, as you go through, right, we have our sustain. If we go back through our strategic planning process, right, now that we've gone through, we've identified our competitive advantage, we've done some strengths, weaknesses, right? Let's take a look at some of our growth strategies. So what are the opportunities? As a retailer, what are things that you can do strategically to really help your company long term? So long term, your growth opportunities are going to be really market penetration, market expansion, retail format development, or diversification. And so as we're looking at these, right, we have our target markets and our retail formats. So when we are saying, okay, we have existing and existing, so if we match these two, that's a market penetration. If we're looking at a new market with an existing retail format, that's our market expansion. If we're looking at an existing target market with a new format, that's a format development. And then at the very bottom, if they're both new, a new target market and a new retail format, that's diversification, right? So this is how we would lay these strategies out. Now, so again, market penetration, okay, this is a growth opportunity. We're trying to attract new customers from a current target market. So we want to get maybe a current customer to visit a store more often, maybe buy more on each visit. So we might extend our hours, try some cross-selling, some things like that. When we talk about market expansion, we're saying, okay, we like our retail format, we like how we're doing business, but we want to try and reach a new market segment. So this could be Dunkin' Donuts opening new stores in an area that they've not traditionally tried before, right? So new target market. Lord and Taylor integrating more stores with fashion rental services or pop-up options, right? Those kind of things. These are market expansions where we're trying a new retail format, right? So using our existing retail format in new market segments. We talk about format development, right? So retail format development, this is, again, a growth opportunity. So this is where we're looking at developing new ways to approach a market with our same target market. So we have our same target market, we're just trying a new retail format. I've seen this with Walmart, where they've done some neighborhood Walmart stores that are like a convenience store size, maybe 30,000 square feet. So you've got these super centers like that are 200,000 square feet, and that's one retail format. And then Walmart now is trying these neighborhood market things that are about 30,000 square feet. So same target market, same area, but new retail format. That's a retail format development. Hey, we're going to try this. Now, when we talk about diversification, we're trying a new format and a new segment. So somebody that a segment that we've not tried before, right? So this could be a little bit more risky. This could also include downsizing, vertical integration, some other areas as well that you can read about. So market penetration, they generally have the greatest chance of succeeding because they're based on your current, they take advantage of your current experiences and what you know and everything else. Diversification opportunities, those are the most risky because you don't know much. It's a new format and it's a new market. So those tend to be the most risky. So when you start looking at these, which ones are, if you have a market penetration opportunity, that's going to be take advantage of your current strengths and everything else. So that's generally the way you would want to go. All right. With that, we are coming to the end of week 3, where we talked about the consumer and retail strategy. Next week, we're going to start talking about retail strategy and our location. And so with that, have a great week. We'll see you in the course.